Welcome to Politically Unstable with Charles Hurt, Washington Times opinion editor. I'm your host, Andy Parks, and I'd like to remind you that you qualify for a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times simply by going to washingtontimes.com/Andy. That's washingtontimes.com/ANDY. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Charles Hurt, Washington Times opinion editor. Hello, Charlie.
Hey, Andy. How you doing, buddy?
Doing fine. Read your column, Merchants of Death. What's the obsession with killing the most innocent of us and acting as though we have the right to say who lives and who dies?
Isn't it incredible? I mean, you think about it, and you see it both in their sort of macro politics, where you have these Democrats in so-called blue states and Republicans in so-called red states. The red states, they don't want to run the lives of people in blue states, but you take the blue states where you have all these disastrous murder cities, and they'll stop at nothing to try to control the red states. They want to run the lives of other people, all of which is just ridiculous politics until it comes to this issue of abortion. And they want to export their culture of death, their religion of hate, on the most innocent people out there. It's so incredible. And this whole debate about when does the life of a child begin is that is where the debate is. Democrats honestly argue that life begins as soon as it's convenient for them. And to them, the whole thing is they talk about how it's a women's rights issue. Well, okay, I'm all in favor of women having rights and all humans having rights, but at some point a life becomes a life. And the idea that Texas passes this bill that identifies that moment as the moment you can detect a heartbeat, well, my goodness, could you be more science oriented and biology oriented than that? It's a really good place to start this whole discussion that society needs to have. Of course, we haven't had this discussion. We don't have this debate because 50 years ago, the Supreme Court decided to take the entire thing out of the hands of the voters, out of the hands of elected legislatures, and instead just take it all to themselves by inventing this insane right to abortion in the Constitution, which contains not one single word about abortion. And they even admit that it doesn't contain the word abortion. They claim that they found the right, they call it in the penumbras. You know what the penumbras are? The penumbra is that little glow that you see around the moon at night. When you have a full moon and you have this glow that's not really the moon, but it's kind of like an optical illusion around the moon. So they found the right to abortion in an optical illusion of the Constitution.
Mm. We hear the call, my body, my choice, yet we're not to have that same right for the COVID-19 vaccination.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, suddenly they dropped that one like a hot potato, didn't they?
Yeah.
They ran for the hills on that one. But see, that goes back to the whole blue state. These Democrats that have ruined about every city in America with their horrible policies that destroy people's lives. That's who these people are. They want to dictate everything other people do. Even though in the case of a vaccine, if you're vaccinated, then you're protected. But that's not what this is about. It's not about protecting themselves, and it's not about individuals protecting themselves. It's all about power. Americans are so acutely attuned to a couple of things. One is fairness. They know fairness. They're also acutely attuned to honesty and dishonesty. They're also acutely attuned to people who are trying to get over on them, trying to push their power so that they can take control of other people's lives. People are acutely attuned to that sort of stuff. And I would argue that the so-called vaccine hesitancy, all of it stems from a sense that people have that these people like Fauci and Biden and all these people and bureaucrats in the government and these Democrats who want to push their agenda on other people, they get the sense that it's all about power to these people. It's not about health care. And because of that, they're very reluctant to get on board with these crazy schemes.
Yeah. You know, I often wonder how the Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi types can claim they have a strong Catholic faith when the church's opinion has never wavered. I mean, to them, all life is sacred from conception until natural death. How in the world can you question that? If they say that they're a good Catholic, then they have to abide by that.
Yeah, and nothing offends some of these people more than the idea that a church actually believes what it preaches.
Yeah.
And I'm not a Catholic, but I have tremendous admiration. I married a Catholic, and so half of my family is Catholic. And I spent a lot of time in Catholic churches as a result. And I have so much respect for the Catholic Church. And you know, going back to the point you made a minute ago about COVID, of course, the Catholic Church has, you know, they never shut down for COVID. They're not a culture of fear. They've taken reasonable steps to try to make people feel safe, but they believe that going to church is a vital, urgent necessity for adherence. And so, and I admire that tremendously. It's far more than you can say about our Episcopal Church, which is completely abandoned the field. You know, they shut down for months out of fear, which I find it beyond appalling. And so so yes, you have the Catholic Church. They actually believe in things more than a lot of these churches, and certainly more than these Democrats do. You have these beliefs. When we talk about the separation of church and state, that whole debate has been completely distorted in modern times to be about not allowing, somehow barring people who have religious beliefs from being guided by those religious beliefs in their legislative affairs. Well, that's a complete perversion of what separation of church and state was all about. What separation of church and state is all about is about preventing the government from inserting itself into religion. Because if you insert government into religion, you destroy religion. That was the great wisdom of our founders. They understood that. It had nothing to do with barring people who were guided by their religion from acting accordingly as elected officials in an elected legislature. And that's a very important distinction. And I think it's one reason why you wind up with some of the stupid, crazy, idiotic things that the government does. No one has been a greater example of the perversion of what government can screw up a one-car parade than Joe Biden in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And the founders realized that. And they said, okay, listen, you have the government over here and you have our religion over here. And you people, government screws up everything so badly. You can do your things that you need to screw up over here. Do not touch our religion, because our religion is so much more important than our government. And if we don't start getting back to that, and even Republicans, I think, don't really understand that. And until we start getting back to that, we're doomed as a country.
Then there's wannabe Governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe. There's one laughable thing about this whole story is the fact that he's campaigning on bringing more business to the Commonwealth because of more abortions.
He actually said that.
I know
he was
it.
At like this business roundtable debate with Glenn Youngkin, and they were talking about how are we going to bring more business to the state of Virginia, and Terry McAuliffe's argument was the way we bring more businesses to the state of Virginia is to promote abortion in Virginia. And of course he's trying to draft off of the Texas legislation and trying to make political hay out of that, because these people want to make political hay out of everything that they think they might be able to score political points off of. But can you imagine? I know tons and tons of friends who believe in abortion rights and support abortion rights. But if you ask them, do you think that we should promote abortion in order to attract businesses to the state? They would laugh you out of the room.
Yeah.
They would think there was something wrong with you. They would think you were absolutely ridiculous. But this is Terry McAuliffe. All this has to do with Terry McAuliffe is accumulating power to himself. That's all these people care about. It has nothing to do with doing the right thing or protecting anybody's rights. The only rights he cares about is his right to have power.
You also had a column, Larry Elder, the LA talk show host, is running against Gavin Newsom. in the recall election next week. And it seems the left has labeled Larry as the white supremacist in the race, except Larry's black.
No. He's the black face of white supremacy. You cannot make this stuff up, except that actually what I love about this is, so Dave Chappelle, I don't know if you're familiar with Dave Chappelle, but Dave Chappelle is a comedian.
Sure.
He's been around for years. Yeah. He's a very, very vulgar comedian, and I would not recommend him to my mother, for example. But Dave Chappelle had one of these hilarious skits, and I don't know whether or not the TV censors would allow it today, but he had a character named Clayton Bigsby who was a blind white supremacist, and because he was blind, didn't realize he was not only blind, he was also black, and he was this profound white supremacist, and of course he got through life as a blind black white supremacist because he was always wearing a hood out in public. And then one day he decided to take off his hood at a book signing for one of his white supremacist books that he had written, and everybody found out that he was black. And I mean, it is comedy. I mean, Dave Chappelle is so ridiculously funny. Again, vulgar. If you're not already a fan of his, I don't recommend going and watching his skits because they're disgustingly vulgar. But he also is ridiculously funny. And so he made up this skit with Clayton Bigsby 15, 20, maybe 25 years ago. It was forever ago. And it's just proof that no matter how ridiculous the comedy sketch is, somehow Democrats eventually will wind up reenacting it, performing it, with total seriousness. And now Larry Elder is the black face of white supremacy out in California, and these people are taking them seriously. How it is that anybody, the entire state of California should be just laughing in their faces. But here they are, the LA Times. Oh, he's the black face of white supremacy. These people are so ridiculous. They're beneath contempt. They're beneath ridicule.
Crazy stuff. Washington Times opinion editor Charles Hurt. You'll want to read Merchants of Death in this week's Washington Times. You can go to WashingtonTimes.com. Charlie, good to talk to you. Take care, my friend.
Always great to talk to you, Andy.
Thanks for listening to Politically Unstable with Charlie Hurt. As I mentioned, you can read all of Charlie's columns at WashingtonTimes.com. And while you're there, check out our great selection of podcasts. I'm Andy Parks. Have a great day.